A police K-9 vanished without a trace. 10 years later, he returned with a secret no one expected. In the heart of Millfield, a town where secrets lay buried beneath the veneer of tranquility, a police cruiser rolled to a stop at the edge of Ravens Woods. Officer Jake Holloway stepped out, his keen eyes scanning the dense foliage. A decade ago, he had been a rookie under the command of Captain Roy Mercer, a man whose iron grip on the town was unquestioned. But today, Jake was a seasoned detective, driven by an unwavering moral compass. He had received an anonymous tip, whispers of a ghost from the past resurfacing, Shadow, the once prized police K-9 who had vanished without a trace. As Jake ventured into the woods, memories flooded back. Shadow, with his unwavering loyalty and unmatched skills, had been more than just a police dog. He had been a symbol of hope in a town suffocating under Mercer's reign of corruption. The crunch of leaves beneath his feet echoed through the stillness as Jake pressed deeper into the woods. Suddenly, a movement caught his eye, a figure emerging from the shadows, limping, scarred, but unmistakable. Shadow, the missing K-9, had returned. A decade earlier, Captain Roy Mercer sat in his office, his cold eyes fixed on the young rookie before him. Jake Holloway, fresh out of the academy, stood at attention, eager to prove himself. Holloway, Mercer's voice cut through the silence, "You're assigned to Shadow. He's the best damn K-9 this department has ever seen. Don't screw it up." Jake nodded, determination etched on his face. He had heard whispers of Shadow's uncanny abilities, and the honor of working alongside such a renowned K-9 was not lost on him. As Jake left the office, he couldn't shake the unease that crept up his spine. Mercer's reputation preceded him, a man feared by the community, whispered about behind closed doors. But as a rookie, Jake had no choice but to follow orders and keep his head down. Little did he know that his partnership with Shadow would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel the very fabric of Millfield's darkest secrets. In the present day, Jake knelt beside Shadow, his heart racing. The K-9's once glossy coat was matted and scarred, telling a story of hardship and survival. Shadow's eyes, still sharp and intelligent, locked onto Jake's, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "Hey, boy," Jake whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Where have you been all this time?" Shadow whined softly, his tail wagging weakly. Jake's mind raced with questions, but one thing was certain: Shadow's disappearance and sudden return were no coincidence. As Jake led Shadow out of the woods, he knew that the path ahead would be treacherous. Mercer's iron grip on the town had only tightened over the years, and the secrets buried in Millfield's past threatened to unravel at any moment. But with Shadow by his side, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would uncover the truth and bring justice to a town long shrouded in darkness. News of Shadow's return spread like wildfire through Millfield. Whispers turned to murmurs, and murmurs turned to a rising tide of hope. The once fearful community began to stir, sensing that change was on the horizon. Jake, now leading the investigation into Shadow's disappearance, found himself at the center of a storm. Mercer, ever the master of control, summoned Jake to his office. "Holloway," Mercer's voice dripped with menace, "I don't know what game you're playing, but let me remind you, I run this town. Shadow's return changes nothing." Jake met Mercer's gaze unflinchingly. "With all due respect, sir, I think it changes everything. Shadow didn't just disappear, he was forced into hiding. And I intend to find out why." Mercer's eyes narrowed, a flicker of fear passing behind the mask of authority. "Tread carefully, Holloway. Some secrets are best left buried." As Jake left the office, he knew that he had just declared war on the most powerful man in Millfield. But with Shadow by his side and the truth as his weapon, he was ready for the battle ahead. In the days that followed, Jake delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding Shadow's disappearance. He pored over old case files, interviewed former colleagues, and pieced together a puzzle that had long been scattered to the winds. One name kept resurfacing: Vincent Russo, a notorious crime lord who had once held Millfield in his grip. Rumors swirled that Mercer had ties to Russo, whispers of backroom deals and corrupt alliances. Jake's investigation led him to the outskirts of town, where he found himself face to face with a man who had once been Mercer's right-hand man, Detective Frank Nichols. Nichols, now retired and living a quiet life, welcomed Jake into his home. Over a cup of coffee, he began to unravel the threads of Mercer's dark past. Roy Mercer wasn't always the man you see today, Nichols began, his eyes distant. There was a time when he believed in justice and doing what was right. But power has a way of corrupting even the most noble of souls. Jake leaned forward, his heart pounding. What happened to Shadow, Frank? Why did he disappear? Nichols sighed heavily. Shadow was more than just a K-9, he was a witness. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see, and Mercer couldn't risk the truth coming out. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Jake found himself drawn deeper into the web of corruption that had long ensnared Millfield. With each new revelation, the stakes grew higher, and the danger more palpable. Shadow, ever the loyal companion, remained by Jake's side, a silent guardian and a reminder of the truth that had been buried for so long. One evening, as Jake sat in his office, poring over old case files, a knock at the door startled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find a woman standing before him, her face etched with grief and determination. "Detective Holloway," she asked, her voice trembling. "My name is Sarah Carlson. I believe you're investigating the disappearance of Shadow, the police K-9. Jake nodded, inviting her in. "What can I do for you, Ms. Carlson?" Sarah took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. 10 years ago, my husband, Michael, was killed in the line of duty. He was Shadow's handler before you. I think his death and Shadow's disappearance are connected. Jake's heart skipped a beat. "Tell me everything," he said, leaning forward. "No detail is too small." As Sarah began to speak, the pieces of the puzzle began to shift, revealing a truth more sinister than Jake had ever imagined. The community of Millfield, long suffocated by fear and oppression, began to stir as whispers of Jake's investigation spread like wildfire. In coffee shops and on street corners, people gathered to share their own stories, their own brushes with the corruption that had long plagued their town. Among them was Lila Owens, a local activist who had long fought against Mercer's iron grip. She had seen the toll his regime had taken on the town, the lives destroyed and the dreams shattered. Lila approached Jake one afternoon, her eyes blazing with determination. "Detective Holloway," she said, her voice steady, "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Mercer's reign of terror must end, and I believe you're the man to do it." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "I can't do it alone," he said, meeting Lila's gaze. "I need the community's support, their voices, their strength." Lila smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "You have it, Detective. We've been waiting for someone to stand up to Mercer, to shine a light on the darkness he's cast over our town. With Shadow by your side, we believe that change is possible." As Jake left the meeting with Lila, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The community was rallying behind him, united in their desire for justice and truth. Together, they would expose the corruption that had long festered in the heart of Millfield. The investigation took a dangerous turn when Jake received an anonymous tip, directing him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. With Shadow by his side, he ventured into the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside the warehouse, Jake discovered a hidden room, its walls lined with files and photographs. At the center of it all was a map of Millfield, marked with red pens and cryptic notes. As Jake pored over the evidence, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Mercer's corruption ran deeper than he had ever imagined, a web of lies and deceit that stretched back decades. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Jake spun around, his hand reaching for his gun, but it was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, a gun trained on Jake's chest. "Detective Holloway," the figure said, his voice cold and menacing. "I warned you to leave well enough alone." Jake's heart raced as he recognized the man before him, Vincent Russo, the crime lord he had long suspected of being in league with Mercer. "It's over, Russo," Jake said, his voice steady. "The truth will come out, no matter what you do to me." Russo laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, detective. This goes beyond Millfield, beyond Mercer. You're playing with fire, and you're about to get burned." News of Jake's confrontation with Russo spread through Millfield like wildfire, igniting a spark of rebellion in the hearts of the community. No longer content to cower in fear, they began to rally behind Jake and Shadow, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. Lila Owens emerged as a leader among the people, her passion and determination inspiring others to stand up and fight. She organized rallies and protests, demanding justice for the victims of Mercer's corruption. As the pressure mounted, cracks began to appear in Mercer's iron grip. His once loyal allies began to distance themselves, sensing the winds of change blowing through Millfield. Jake, emboldened by the community's support, pressed forward with his investigation, uncovering layer upon layer of deceit and corruption. With each new revelation, the truth became clearer and the path to justice more certain. But Mercer, ever the master manipulator, had one final card to play. In a desperate attempt to maintain his grip on power, he called a press conference, his face a mask of contrition and regret. "I have made mistakes," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I have allowed my judgment to be clouded by the trappings of power. But I stand before you today, humbled and repentant, ready to make amends." Jake watched the press conference with a growing sense of unease. He knew Mercer's words were nothing more than a smokescreen, a last-ditch effort to maintain his grip on power. But the community, armed with the truth and united in their resolve, would not be fooled again. They had seen the true face of corruption, and they were ready to fight for the future they deserved. As the battle for Millfield's soul reached its climax, Jake and Shadow found themselves at the center of the storm. With each passing day, the evidence against Mercer and his corrupt allies grew more damning, and the community's cries for justice grew louder. But Mercer, ever the cunning adversary, had one final trick up his sleeve. In a desperate attempt to silence Jake and Shadow, he set a trap, luring them to a remote location on the outskirts of town. As Jake and Shadow arrived at the designated meeting spot, they found themselves surrounded by Mercer's men, armed and dangerous. "You should have left well enough alone, Holloway," Mercer snarled, his face twisted with rage. "You and that damn dog have caused me enough trouble." Jake stood his ground, his hand resting on Shadow's head. "It's over, Mercer," he said, his voice steady. "The truth is out, and the community won't stand for your corruption any longer." Mercer laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think the community can save you? They're nothing but sheep, easily led and easily silenced." But as Mercer's men closed in, the sound of sirens split the air. The community, led by Lila Owens, had rallied to Jake's aid, armed with the truth and the courage to stand up to corruption. In that moment, the balance of power shifted. Mercer's men, seeing the writing on the wall, began to lay down their weapons, one by one. Mercer, his face twisted with rage and desperation, made a final, futile grab for power. But it was too late. The community had spoken, and the reign of corruption was at an end. In the aftermath of Mercer's downfall, Millfield began the long, painful process of healing. The community, once divided by fear and oppression, came together in a spirit of unity and hope, determined to build a better future for themselves and their children. Jake, hailed as a hero by the people, found himself at the center of the rebuilding effort. With Shadow by his side, he worked tirelessly to root out the last vestiges of corruption, to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Lila Owens, now a respected leader in the community, worked hand in hand with Jake, her passion and determination an inspiration to all who knew her. Together, they began to plant the seeds of change, to nurture the fragile shoots of hope that had long been suppressed by Mercer's reign of terror. In the heart of Millfield, a once-abandoned lot began to transform, as volunteers from all walks of life came together to create a community garden. The garden, with its lush greenery and vibrant blooms, became a symbol of the town's resilience, a testament to the power of unity and hope. As the town began to heal, stories of the past began to emerge, tales of bravery and sacrifice, of ordinary people who had stood up to corruption and injustice. Among them was the story of Michael Carlson, Shadow's former handler, whose death had long been shrouded in mystery. As the truth of his sacrifice came to light, the community rallied around his widow, Sarah, offering their support and their love. In the end, it was the small acts of kindness, the daily choices to stand up for what was right, that truly transformed Millfield. The community, once a place of secrets and lies, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of the human spirit. Years passed, and Millfield continued to thrive, its once darkened streets now filled with laughter and light. The community garden, now a cherished landmark, had become a gathering place for young and old alike, a symbol of the town's unity and resilience. Jake, now the chief of police, worked tirelessly to maintain the trust and respect of the community he served. With Shadow by his side, he became a beloved figure in Millfield, a guardian and a friend to all who knew him. Lila Owens, now the mayor of Millfield, worked hand in hand with Jake to build a brighter future for the town. Together, they fought for justice and equality, their partnership a shining example of what could be achieved when people work together for the common good. But even as Millfield prospered, the scars of the past remained. For Sarah Carlson, the pain of her husband's loss had never truly faded, the mystery of his death a constant ache in her heart. One day, as Sarah walked through the community garden, she came across a small, unassuming plaque, tucked away in a quiet corner. On it, a simple inscription, in memory of Officer Michael Carlson, who gave his life in service to his community. As Sarah knelt before the plaque, tears streaming down her face, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She looked up to see Jake standing beside her, his eyes filled with compassion and understanding. "He was a hero," Jake said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "And he will never be forgotten." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. In that moment, she knew that her husband's sacrifice had not been in vain, that his legacy would live on in the hearts and minds of all who knew him. As the years passed, Millfield continued to evolve, its once tarnished reputation now a distant memory. The community, united in its commitment to justice and equality, had become a model for other towns across the country, a shining example of what could be achieved when people work together for the common good. Jake and Lila, now the elder statesmen of Millfield, watched with pride as a new generation of leaders emerged, young men and women who had grown up in the shadow of Mercer's corruption, but who had been inspired by the bravery and determination of those who had fought against it. Among them was Sarah Carlson's daughter, Emily, who had grown up hearing stories of her father's bravery and sacrifice. With a passion for justice and a fierce determination to carry on her father's legacy, Emily had become a rising star in the Millfield Police Department, a beacon of hope for a new generation. As Jake watched Emily take the oath of office, her eyes shining with pride and purpose, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction and hope. The seeds that he and Lila had planted all those years ago had taken root, and now a new generation was ready to carry the torch, to build upon the foundation of justice and equality that they had fought so hard to establish. And through it all, Shadow remained a constant presence, a symbol of the unbreakable bond between the police and the community they served. Though his muzzle was now flecked with gray, his eyes remained as sharp and intelligent as ever, a testament to the enduring power of loyalty and love. In quiet moments, Jake would often find himself lost in thought, reflecting on the long and winding journey that had brought him to this moment. He thought of the sacrifices that had been made, the lives that had been lost, and the countless acts of courage and kindness that had brought Millfield back from the brink. And he knew, with a certainty that came from deep within his soul, that as long as there were people like Emily and Shadow, people who were willing to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost, there would always be hope for a better tomorrow. As the sun rose over Millfield, casting a warm, golden glow over the community garden, Jake and Shadow made their way along the winding paths, their footsteps falling into a familiar rhythm. Around them, the garden was coming to life, as volunteers young and old tended to the flowers and vegetables, their laughter and chatter mingling with the gentle hum of bees and the soft rustling of leaves. At the center of the garden, a small crowd had gathered, their faces filled with expectation and joy. As Jake and Shadow approached, a hush fell over the group, and Lila stepped forward, her eyes shining with pride. "Friends," she began, her voice ringing out clear and strong, "we gather today to celebrate a milestone in the history of our community. 10 years ago, we stood together against corruption and injustice, united in our determination to build a better future for ourselves and our children. Today, we stand together once more to honor the courage and sacrifice of those who fought for that future and to reaffirm our commitment to the values that have made Millfield a beacon of hope for so many." As Lila spoke, Jake's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the faces of those who had been with him from the beginnings: Frank Nichols, Sarah Carlson, and so many others who had risked everything to stand up for what was right. And there, standing tall and proud among them, was Emily Carlson, her eyes shining with the same fierce determination that had driven her father to give his life in service to his community. As the ceremony drew to a close, Jake felt a gentle nudge at his side. He looked down to see Shadow, his loyal companion, gazing up at him with a depth of understanding that only a true friend could possess. In that moment, Jake knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter how dark the path may seem at times, he would never be alone. He had Shadow, and he had the love and support of a community that had been through the fire and emerged stronger, more united than ever before. And with that knowledge, he stepped forward into the sunlight, ready to face whatever the future may bring, secure in the knowledge that together, they could overcome anything. As the years continued to pass, Millfield thrived under the leadership of Jake, Lila, and the new generation of community leaders. The once corrupt town had become a model of transparency, integrity, and unity, attracting visitors and new residents from far and wide who were drawn to its vibrant spirit and welcoming atmosphere. But even as Millfield prospered, Jake knew that the fight against corruption and injustice was never truly over. He had seen firsthand how easily power could corrupt, how even the most well-intentioned leaders could be tempted by greed and ambition. And so, he dedicated himself to ensuring that the lessons of the past were never forgotten, that the principles of integrity and accountability remained at the forefront of every decision made in Millfield. One of Jake's proudest achievements was the creation of the Millfield Ethics Commission, an independent body tasked with overseeing the conduct of public officials and investigating any allegations of wrongdoing. With Emily Carlson as one of its founding members, the commission quickly became a powerful force for good in the community, rooting out corruption wherever it sought to take hold and sending a clear message that in Millfield, no one was above the law. As the Commission's work gained national attention, other communities began to take notice, seeking to learn from Millfield's example and implement similar reforms in their own towns and cities. And so, what had begun as a small spark of hope in a town once shrouded in darkness had become a beacon of light for the entire nation, a testament to the power of ordinary people to effect extraordinary change. For Jake, it was a humbling reminder of the responsibility that came with leadership and the importance of never losing sight of the values that had brought them to this moment. And as he looked to the future, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, Millfield would face them as it always had, with courage, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to justice for all. In the twilight of his years, Jake often found himself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. From a young rookie cop, full of idealism and hope, to a seasoned leader who had helped guide his community through its darkest hours, he had seen and experienced more than most could imagine in a lifetime. But through it all, there had been one constant presence by his side, his loyal companion, Shadow. Even now, as the years had taken their toll on them both, their bond remained as strong as ever, a testament to the power of friendship and the enduring spirit of a true hero. As Jake sat in his favorite spot in the community garden, Shadow resting at his feet, he couldn't help but feel a sense of deep gratitude for all that he had been given. The love and support of his community, the unwavering loyalty of his closest friend, and the knowledge that he had made a real difference in the world, these were the things that truly mattered, the things that made all the struggles and sacrifices worthwhile. And as he watched the sun begin to set over Millfield, casting a warm, golden glow over the town he loved so dearly, Jake knew that his work was not yet finished. There would always be new challenges to face, new battles to be fought in the name of justice and equality. But he also knew that he would not have to face them alone. With Shadow by his side, and the support of a community that had become his family, he knew that there was nothing they couldn't overcome. And so, as the last rays of sunlight faded into the gentle embrace of twilight, Jake closed his eyes and let out a contented sigh. He had lived a life of purpose and meaning, had made a difference in the world that would endure long after he was gone. And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty and peace of the garden he had helped to create, Jake knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Home, at last, in the heart of a community that would always be a part of him, and he a part of it. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Jake looked down at Shadow with a smile, his heart full of love and gratitude. "We did good, old friend," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We did real good." And with that, Jake and Shadow sat in contented silence, watching as the world around them slowly drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that their legacy would live on, a shining example of the power of love, friendship, and the unbreakable bonds of community.